the end of the war in the Middle East, or are both sides being deceitful, trying to achieve their own goals? On Thursday morning, President Donald Trump announced that there is an agreement between Israel and Hamas on the first phase of a peace deal.
What does this include?
This includes This includes
Let's break down the details of the signed agreement and then the details of the unsigned agreement. First, Hamas undertakes to gather and return to Israel between 20 and 40 people by Tuesday. No one knows the exact number, but these are what are called the remaining living hostages. Second, Israel withdraws its troops to agreed security lines. I don't know exactly what that means. Israel still controls 50, as was announced, 3% of the territory in Gaza. This is after the withdrawal of troops. Third, Israel is releasing more than 200,000 Palestinian prisoners, among whom 250 are serving life sentences. Third, Israel retains the right to veto some intermunicipalities. Izrazovtsev, those who were especially distinguished for their atrocities, those who took part in the attack on October 7, will not be released. Fourth, the agreement provides for expanded access for international humanitarian organizations, such as the United Nations, the Red Cross, and others, for the delivery of food and medicine. This document has been signed, or will be signed, as I understand it, in the near future. In short, this is because Turkey, Qatar, and Egypt pressured Hamas over the weekend, mainly due to Egypt. The ceasefire will take effect after the agreement is ratified by the Cabinet of Ministers of Israel. This phase is considered preparatory for the main deal, including reconstruction, which will involve the restoration of Gaza and participation in the political life of Gaza. That is how the governance of Gaza will be organized. Well, Israel and America are talking about a terrorist organization there, like the Palestine Liberation Organization. Lo and Hamas should have nothing to do with the governance of Gaza in the future. In the coming months, well, it's still unknown when the final part of the negotiations is expected. That is, I think that the start of the negotiations is expected, so to speak, quite soon. But when they will end, actually no one knows, and no limits have been set yet.
With us is Robert Grinvey, the architect of the Abraham Accords. Robert, this is so important. I've been smiling all day. And just now, news came in that the United States is sending about 200 soldiers to Israel to provide support and monitor Gaza. That's a good move.
Well, it's nice to be with you, and thank you for having me. And like you and many others, I've been smiling ever since I heard this news. We don't yet know the specifics of the International Peacekeeping or Observer Force or the United States role. It's unsurprising the United States will send more resources to ensure the transfer of remains and hostages. And so, until we know the details of what they will do, I think we can support the president and trust his judgment, and acknowledge that it's unlikely they will be in Gaza, but rather providing support.
Let's remember the great Frederick Bastiat and his what is seen and what is not seen. It's still unclear how the parties will be able to reach an agreement for Hamas to disband, leave Gaza, and stop playing a role in the enclave's political life. But Israel wants the hostages, and Hamas wants a month or two of respite. And perhaps having gotten what they wanted, they will now be making some decisions for themselves. If nothing else works out, Israel will call up the reservists again and go into Gaza to finish off Hamas, while the leaders of Hamas, of course, hope that in a couple of months world opinion will once again turn to condemning Israel. And most importantly, they will manage to convince the Turks and the Qataris not to agree to the expulsion of Hamas, its disarmament, and so on. That is, at least somehow turn in their favor what has just been discussed and accepted by most countries.
Well, you're right. You're right. Some of the most difficult things will follow after the transfer. But the loss of leverage, the gathering of the international community to support the deal, really forced Hamas to go for it. President Trump and his team definitely deserve praise. The next steps after the transfer will be among the hardest. We haven't seen this happened in Lebanon, where technocrats were expected to lead, but Hezbollah still controls the government. I don't know if the same thing will happen here, but the return of the hostages and the loss of that leverage open up broad opportunities for accountability mechanisms that can be activated if they fail to make that transition. And of course, reconstruction can't happen unless the technocrats come in and some form of security is established.
The ongoing war. But of course, October 7 marks the day 2 years since all of this began, that terrorist act that happened. Let's welcome Jonathan Schanzer, Executive Director of the Foundation for Defense of Democracies, to the conversation. Thank you very much for joining us on Live Now from Fox. And obviously, this will mark 2 years since it all began. What could define this third year? What can we expect in the coming year? Well,
I think everyone is hoping for the end of the conflict right now. And I believe that much of this actually depends on the deal that Donald Trump made with the Israelis. Not even with Hamas, but specifically with Qatar. I think much of this is actually related to the airstrike that the Israelis carried out on September 9th. They tried to eliminate several high-ranking Hamas leaders right in broad daylight in the center of Doha, the capital of Qatar. It was at that moment that the Qataris said, you know what, I don't think it's worth being the hosts of Hamas anymore, being their patrons, their financial backers. And that's why now a lot depends on whether the Qataris have influence, whether they have leverage over Hamas to bring this matter to an end. But that's exactly what we're all waiting for now, whether the Qataris can really bring Hamas to the table, make them release the hostages, and finally lay down their arms. By the way, they've already been defeated for 6 to 10 months. We know that Hamas can't win this war. They just didn't want to lose it. And now it seems that everything depends on this one patron in this microstate of Qatar in the Persian Gulf. Now, everyone is looking at them to see if they can get Hamas to finally end this war. End this war. Everyone.
That's right. Whoever pays for dinner gets to dance with her. Qatar has spent hundreds of millions of dollars on Hamas and just as much on organizing pro-Hamas demonstrations at universities in the United States, on the streets of Europe, and so on. If they abandon this policy, which has drawn the world's attention to this tiny state, there will be significantly less pro-Palestinian and pro-Hamas activity in the world. The thing is, Trump offered Qatar an incredibly lucrative deal, as they said in The Godfather, a deal you can't refuse. Qatar is investing $500 billion in biotech and artificial intelligence in the United States. which will most likely turn into a 5, 10, maybe even 10-0 times bigger profit. Qatar will also spend $700 billion on United States purchases and joint ventures with the United States and its neighbors. And in a way, if Qatar's competitors also invested in new technologies. In the United States, I'm discussing Saudi and the Emirates. They signed similar deals and de facto became partners and allies of the United States of America, tying themselves to us with financial and all sorts of other huge financial interests. If the Qataris aren't idiots, and I strongly suspect they're not, then it's very disadvantageous for them. It's beneficial to do something that might really upset Trump and the American leadership in general. By the way, this is another example of Trump's multi-step strategies and comprehensive problem-solving. To interest Hamas's financial partners with something unattainable for them, something they could never achieve on their own, like turning $1 trillion into $10 trillion, but they just can't do it, explaining to them that their neighbors are already doing it, and they'll just end up looking like dwarfs next to them. Everyone is always afraid of this, that your neighbors will become incredibly rich and powerful, while you, so to speak, remain small and weak. And also, guys, let's say if we do it, we'll end all the wars in the Middle East, we'll build you a land with jelly shores and rivers flowing with milk, so to speak, with wide waters, and to the happy and glorifying the people who glorify you. Notice the people never matter to anyone. Once again, who missed it? No one ever cares about the people, but praising the people, that's nice. But let's get back to Hamas and the road that lies ahead of them. Well,
a couple of things. First, Hamas was defeated a long time ago. They're just a shadow of their former selves. The United States continues to provide weapons to Israel, despite all the pressure, despite all the condemnation around the world. I think Donald Trump held his ground. It was a remarkable display of resilience to support our ally and let them finish this war. Hamas really couldn't keep fighting. They were too weak to fight, and I think they just needed a little push to finally end this war. And I really think that's what happened. But I also think that, that's how it all started, in my opinion. On September 9, the Israelis launched an attack in downtown Doha, Qatar, where the Hamas leadership was located. The Qataris thought that no one would ever strike them. No one
would ever dare to do that. And at the moment when it happened, at the moment when the Israelis took the initiative, I think the Qataris looked around and said to themselves, wait a minute, we need some help and protection from the United States.
Can you offer us protection? And Donald Trump stepped in. I have to say it was a brilliant move. He said, all right, we can help you. We can guarantee that you will never be attacked again. But you have to restrain Hamas. You have to end this war. You end this war.
John Schanzer said that it's difficult to express the success or failure of the second phase in percentage terms. Allow me to be pessimistic and say that the implementation of all the remaining points of the peace plan, as they currently exist and are written, has approximately 0 chance. Well, all right, I won't be so pessimistic. Let's put it this way, they have 10% chance. I meant to say 1%, but said 10. Let's be optimistic. They have 10%. What is written will happen. Now, the amended clauses and the signing of the agreement with the amended clauses, that is, not in the form proposed by the United States of America, exist. If you change things here and there, this and that, then I would probably give it a 30% chance. Also, there's a chance nothing will work out and the war will go on, either with all the Liko-Masovites or just those refusing to surrender. I'd give that a 60% chance. So 10% that the agreement will be as it is written now, 30% that there will be an agreement but with various other conditions, and 60% that nothing will happen, Nichubu. So, as they say, it won't get past phase 1, meaning the slaughter will go on. I think that's a very good optimistic scenario because that still means there's a 40% chance for peace, gentlemen. And before that, for 2, maybe even 2,500 years, there was no chance at all. None. 0 minus. Suddenly, out of nowhere, it's 40%, a huge increase. So that's already remarkable. But the most remarkable thing, actually, is that Trump brought all the Middle Eastern players to himself. Except for Iran, of course, to joint and incredibly profitable activities tied to Saudi Arabia. Well, basically, almost 1.2 billion Sunnis, that's it. And they will surge ahead, moving away from Iran, which is stuck in the Middle Ages. And they have their own conflicts because Saudi Arabia and 1.2 billion Muslims are Sunnis, while Iran and 400 million are Shiites. That's why breaking away from the enemy, and they are enemies, real enemies, is much more significant than any imagined enemy. Israel is very important for the victors and very painful for the losers. In China, because of Trump, the struggle to remove Xi Jinping has intensified. And somewhere around 2 billion. From October 20 to 23, they are holding the 4th plenary session of the party central committee. Well, in general, we'll find out. It's like a party gathering for them, a party get-together, and we'll find out whether he stayed or lost his influence. If he is removed from the position of general secretary, it means a shift in relations with the United States. He might stay president and wait for the 1927 Party Congress, but he'll be powerless, as control of the army and security agencies will already be taken from him. So, in Hollywood it should be. Probably a change in attitude toward the United States will also lead to changes in support for Russia's war. Here, the United States, Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the Emirates will offer China our oil and gas, and Russia will be left with only one gas pipeline to China, while everything else will be supplied by something else. It's almost a financial disaster for Russia. You see how everything is actually interconnected. I think Modi in India as well. Well, at the very least, he'll have trouble, or he might even be ousted for making a desperately wrong choice of enemies and partners. Well, just a desperately wrong choice. But that's already a ricochet effect. And for now, the United States, Israel, oil-producing countries, those who have already signed the Abraham Accords, and those who will sign them in the future, well, according to rumors, even Indonesia is planning to. They have formed an alliance based on cooperation and mutual benefit.
Welcome back to Live Now from Fox, where we continue to follow the latest developments regarding the signing of the first phase of the Gaza agreement between Israel and Hamas. We have several live streams from around the world. This one is from Gaza, and I also want to show a social media post from the White House. It says, quoting President Trump, "I am very proud to announce that Israel and Hamas have signed the first phase of our peace plan. Blessed peacemaker." Joining us now to discuss this is Lucas Tomlinson from Fox News, and he will join us to break down everything that has happened. So, Lucas, tell us how all of this happened.
Well, Carol, it's a pleasure to join you this morning. This cannot be underestimated. It's a historic breakthrough in the Middle East. Over the past 2 years, we've seen intense fighting in Gaza. We've seen hostages taken on October 7th, and now about 20 remaining living hostages in Gaza are expected to be returned to their families. President Trump said Monday he will visit the region. Of course, it's a major achievement. President Trump sent his son-in-law, Jared Kushner, and his special envoy, Steve Wyckoff, to Egypt, to Sharm el-Sheikh, a Red Sea resort, for talks with Hamas and Qatar representatives. Indeed, this was not the last. It was not just one thing that led to the breakthrough. You could say Israel has dismantled Hamas in the last 2 years. Hezbollah also led to a regime change in Syria, and Israel destroyed Hezbollah in Lebanon. Don't forget, President Trump also mentioned the United States airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities in June, the weakening of Iran, and the severing of their ties with the Mediterranean after the fall of Assad's regime. Israel is also striking Hamas leaders, or at least trying to, in Qasara. This has certainly drawn the attention of Qatari leaders to the fact that this war needs to end. And of course, the joy cannot be overstated, felt not only in Israel, but also in Gaza by many Palestinians. Of course, we've seen the lines, the suffering of some people. People there just wanted this war to end. Indeed, it was exhaustion, you could say, Carol, that brought us to this moment. But President Trump and his team deserve most of the credit. It never seemed like President Trump ever acted formally. He was deeply involved in the situation in Gaza, and he was, as officials say, very persistent, not only with the Arab leaders in the region, but also with the Israeli prime minister, demanding a ceasefire.
In the next 72 hours, we will see whether all the hostages are released, or again, just a third, and the rest almost not at all. No one here knows how the terrorists will act, but the Hamas leadership, which has long made billions from tunnels, construction, weapons, and food fraud, they are quite capable of making a decision. Enough. Then Field Commanders Miri in the tunnels will decide for themselves. After Tuesday, we'll talk about all this again. And for now, ladies and gentlemen, until we meet again,